And we are back here on Open. Daren Jaime here with you. We were going to have a conversation with our political commentators talking about Fidel Castro, but don't have Julio Pabon in studio with us. We're going to bring him back in a couple of weeks to really get this conversation going with our other political commentator, JC Polanco, because this is a conversation that really needs to be had, as many people are still divided about the Castro legacy, whether he was good for Cuba or bad for Cuba, and we want to have that discussion right here on live television. And so we do have JC who's here in studio with us. And JC, good to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Good. As we continue to talk, we had other news we're going to talk about politically anyway. And yesterday, talk about the electoral vote. And all certifying Donald Trump was now the president-elect. But not in addition to the fact that he's president-elect, you also have the Republicans who have control of the House, as well as the Senate and a Republican president. From a perspective, how do we see this playing out? Is it going to be a total push by the Republican Party, and there's going to be a cakewalk? What are we going to see?
I got to tell you, if I were a Democrat, and I'm not here to advise Democrats, I'd really go back to the drawing board and figure out what happened. I mean, this was an election that was handed to you, and you lost it. Perhaps it was the nomination of Hillary Clinton, that she was a very flawed candidate. I speak to many Democrats here in the Bronx. They also agree that she was a flawed candidate, and perhaps she should have gone somewhere else. But I got to tell you this. You know, since President Obama won the White House, we have seen a turnover of over 900 state legislative seats across the country go from Democrat to Republican. We now have 13 Democratic governors that have lost their position to Republican governors. And then when you examine Congress, over 200 congressional seats have switched hands from Democrat to Republican under the Obama legacy. So it begs the question, what are you guys going to do? Because this is huge. I think that Democrats have to really look at this election and realize that just focusing on issues that affect urban America are not enough. And it's never going to win anymore. And if you look at Washington and you look at the power shift that has happened, the Democrats have become a regional party. It's become an urban party. The Republican truly is the national party now, controlling so many state legislative houses, so many governors' mansions, and now full control of Washington. But for those Bronxites and those Americans that may be watching online that figure that everything Donald Trump wants is going to get through Congress, not so fast. Things like the Supreme Court justice decision require 60 votes. We only have 52. And I say we, I mean the Republican Party. When you think about questions regarding immigration or whether there's going to be a deportation force, that requires 51. And you know, it's interesting to note that there are many moderate Republican senators and moderate members of the House that are Republican that would not vote in favor of many of the things that we heard Donald Trump campaign on.
Well, let me ask this question, talking about the cabinet, because he's made some very questionable picks. A lot of people have asked the questions. You know, you got Ben Carson involved. You got, and he's going to be over HUD. You got, retired generals coming back, and they're going to actually be working in the cabinet. And you got Senator Jeff Sessions, who brings a lot of questions out of the Carolinas. Here's a question that people want to know. Just looking at those picks, what does it tell us about the Trump administration?
Look, I think that there have been some good picks, and I think there have been some questionable picks, very questionable picks. I've made that clear here several times. I think that we have to really examine some of them. We have to give them the opportunity of having a hearing and ask those hard questions. And I know that many of the Bronxites that I speak to when they email me or on Twitter or on Facebook are concerned about, for example, Jeff Sessions, a senator from Alabama that has been nominated to be Attorney General. They question whether or not he's sensitive to some of the racial history that we have in the United States, whether or not his tone has changed since the 80s, and what is he going to say about some of the statements he made in 2006 regarding Dominicans in the floor of the Senate. These are some of the things that I hear. So I think there are some questionable picks, and they're going to have their opportunity to go before the Senate committee that is in charge of passing through that nomination, and we're going to see firsthand what these people have to say and whether or not they're good or not. But I think the president has won the authority to make the nominations that he sees fit. One thing's for sure, Daren, he promised a certain type of government. This is going to be a conservative Republican government. This is going to be a government where he has made it clear he wants to reverse Roe versus Wade, yet 55% of white women across the United States voted for Donald Trump. This is a guy who has made it clear that he's really not into political correctness, and we see that evident in his appointments to the cabinet thus far. So he promised these things, and these are the things he's coming through, and he won with over 300 electoral votes.
Looking now back at the whole carrier the whole carrier incident where he quoted, "I saved these jobs." Hearing what we've heard right now, what do we make of that?
You know, I think the carrier opportunity for President-elect Trump was a big deal. It was a great photo op. But I think that, you know, if you really...
A little premature?
Maybe, you know, if you really study the issue, you would realize that there were incentives provided to carriers to keep a certain amount of those jobs back in Indiana with the help of Governor Pence, Vice President-elect Pence. And, you know, I'm happy to know that almost 1,000 people will keep their jobs during the holiday season. And if it means that the President-elect gets to have a photo op and a press conference and gets to go on Twitter and say he's the second coming, well, then let him do it. I know that there are almost 1,000 families today that are happy that their families aren't losing their jobs to Mexico. So I think we're going to see, hopefully, he promised that there was going to be more of that. Hopefully, we're going to see some of those jobs no longer go to Mexico and stay right here in the United States. But this is the issue. He promised a lot. He told West Virginians that he wants to bring coal back and bring those coal miners back to work. I think that it ignores the reality of technology, advancements in technology, advancements in automation. And I don't know whether or not many of these jobs are going to be able to come back. That's why I think it's crucial for President-elect Trump to get the support of Congress to pass through this infrastructure bill that he talks about. It's going to create thousands and thousands of jobs across the country. And I would like to see that happen because we're going to see many people in the Bronx be employed if the infrastructure bill that he's discussing, where we're going to rebuild our roads, our highways, our bridges, goes through. And he has another opportunity. What is President-elect Trump going to do about the inner cities? If he has a Marshall Plan-like idea for the inner cities, we may end up absolving him from all of the negative things he said during the campaign if he could change the inner cities around. So I'm hopeful.
And you talk about how realistic is that? I mean, given the fact that, you know, okay, he's got literally 4 years at his helm, but we do know the midterm elections come in 2 years. Conceivably, if things don't go right, what happens at the end of 2 years if the Democrats are able to swing back in there?
I think that President-elect Trump, and just for your viewers, just remember, for a year and a half, I was here with Daren, and I was a never Trump Republican, and I've paid the price dearly. So I'm trying to be objective here, and I have subscribed to President Obama and Michelle Obama's school of transition, which is let's hope for the best. He's our president. Let's hope he's successful in the good things that he plans to do. And that's all we have right now because we've never seen him in action in a government position. So we have to hope, make sure that he does positive things and not negative things. And I think that we have to really root for his success because his success is really our success. I really think that he has a plan for the inner cities. He talked about it. And you know, I hope it comes through. I hope he really brings jobs back to the inner cities. I hope he revitalizes these communities, and I hope he helps bring crime down. How he goes about it, I really pray that we have some good people around him.
What should be his message concerning the election? Given the fact that you talk about Russia, and you talk about Russia, we know that Russia is hacked in, and before this, it was he that said the elections are rigged. And now we have definite proof that there was some hacking involved. What culpability does he have in terms of speaking to America and saying something with regards to Russia?
Daren, I think it'd be unfair right now to accuse President-elect Trump in being in some conspiracy with the Russians to hack DNC emails. You know, I think it's clear that the FBI has signed on to the 17 intelligence agencies that says that the Russians were involved in the hacking of those emails. I think there's going to be hearings. I know Senator McConnell, who's a majority leader in the Senate, has already called for these hearings. We will have those hearings. We will hear how this happened and do everything we can to prevent it from happening in the future. I don't think he was intimately involved. I hope he was not intimately involved, and we will only find out in the long run as these investigations happen. But I am going to tell you this. I see too many people take advantage of the reports that are coming from these intelligence agencies to delegitimize President-elect Trump. And that's where the defense mode comes in on behalf of President-elect Trump and his people, where they view this as an attack on him winning the election hands down.
His talk in the beginning of the campaign was about totally repealing Obamacare. Since then, we've heard that now he's kind of changed his tune. What do we see happen to Obamacare with the Trump presidency?
You know, he says that he's going to repeal and replace, and throughout this entire year, he's been talking about getting rid of it altogether. But recently, as you mentioned, Daren, he wants to keep some things. He wants to keep the age of 26 as being covered under a parent's insurance, which I think is a good idea. And then the big one that affects a lot of Bronxites, those with pre-existing conditions being discriminated against by insurance companies. So if you have eczema or asthma or some other disease, it was very difficult for you to get insurance before, but with Obamacare, it makes it easier for you to get insurance. He says he's going to look into ways to keep these two things. The question is, how does he keep these two things without an individual mandate? And that is why it's very important that he surrounds himself with brilliant minds that are going to help him navigate through what the people wanted in this election, which is a repeal and replace, to the realities of protecting the 25 million people that are now under Obamacare.
Stay with us. J.C. Blanco, our political commentator, will continue his conversation. Coming up, we go from national to local, talking about New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio and what grade do we give the mayor currently.